Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nate Crespo, your host for today and forever. And welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast, where it is my job to focus on the unique journeys to the law and law school of professionals in the legal field and law students. And today, we have another incredible guest. And I have to apologize again. I'm a little nasally. I said this on the last episode. I'm doing this podcast episodes on the same day, Mom. So I'm not sick on Thursday when this episode comes out. I know she's listening. I know she's going to say something. I have that warrior spirit. But let's talk about what we're doing today. Enough about me. He is a Southern Illinois University School of Law graduate and currently works as a lawyer and owner of Legal Advocacy Headquarters. He's held past positions as the director and clinical assistant professor for the Veterans Legal Assistance Program at Southern Illinois University School of Law and as an associate attorney at Broad and Jackson. Excited to have him on the podcast today, Mr. Martin Parsons. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Nate. I'm excited to be here for sure.
Well, Martin, I'm just as excited to have you here today. And before we get started, Martin, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
You covered some of the stuff. I'm a SAU grad. I'm a late in life lawyer. I had a whole career in the military, 4 years in the Marine Corps, and another 22 years part-time and full-time in the Illinois Army National Guard. And I retired, didn't really have a plan, and decided to go to law school. And really was finishing something that I had wanted to do since I was young. So it was finishing that journey. So I came to Southern Illinois, came to Carbondale, and went to law school, and then graduated. And you gave the high points of that, working at a small firm, and then back at the law school to restart their veterans clinic. And then last couple of years ago, struck out on my own. Although I still teach a couple of classes at the law school as an adjunct.
So, usually in these episodes, we start off, we go back. People usually graduate college, they take like 2 or 3 years, then they go to law school. But this one's special. This is such a unique journey. This is one of the most unique journeys I've ever had on the podcast. Now, from 1982 all the way to 2008, you were first an embassy guard at the United States Marine Corps and then a member of the Illinois Army National Guard. So, can you talk about those experiences a little bit? And as well as an additional question, can you talk about how your experiences in the Army and the Marine Corps shaped your perspective going forward, going into law school?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. So going back to the Marine Corps, when I first started in high school, I didn't have much direction, and no one talked to me about going to college. And the Marine Corps recruiter, by referral from a friend of mine, knocked on my door, asked me if I wanted to join. So I did, and did 4 years in the Marine Corps. And I had a pretty lucky tour. I was volunteered to be an embassy guard and was accepted, and I did uh, half that time in Mexico City, which was pretty good, and then the other half in Guatemala City, which was also still pretty good at the time. Picked up a little Spanish, and then decided that staying in the Marine Corps wasn't for me, and actually decided I was going to go to school because working in the embassies, you're around people who are in the State Department, and I thought that was a pretty neat lifestyle. And so to do that, though, you'd have to have at least a bachelor's. I also learned that lawyers, somebody with a law degree has a better chance of that. So I got out of the Marine Corps to go to college and found out that in Illinois, the Illinois Army National Guard has another scholarship, which I would need to go to law school. So I joined the Illinois Army National Guard as a part-time soldier while I was going to school. And then I dropped out of school and went back to school, and took a lot of years to eventually finish my degree. But in that time, I got a full-time active duty National Guard job. So I was active duty again. And I did that for another 16 years to have a full-time retirement, which is then in 2008, as you mentioned, when I retired. And that was the period. I didn't really have a plan for my life, and decided to go to law school.
Well, that's just immensely beautiful because it really exemplifies the never say never attitude. There's never an end to anything. Every single waking day is always a day to start something new. And you especially did that by entering law school. So let's talk about the first year of law school. How was that for you? How was that transition from not doing much schooling to then going into law school and having to deal with that?
Yeah, it was a pretty big steep learning curve, really learning to learn again because I hadn't been in school. Even though my undergraduate took a lot of years plucking away at to get done, I hadn't been actively in school for a few years, especially not full time and nothing like law school. Most of my undergrad was pieced together between correspondence courses, independent study things here and there to so nothing nearly as rigorous. So the first part, it was challenging. It was really hard to get in that mindset, but uh, sort of going back to your question that I didn't answer about what things from the Marine Corps and the Army helped me, shaped me. What I had was the ability to just to know it was to focus and structure my time, and know that I just had to grind it out. I just had to if to put the time in, and when I would get frustrated about not getting it because I was older and hadn't been studying, taking a breath and saying to myself, okay, you can do this, and relying on some of that older training to stick with it.
So I have to ask now, entering law school, I know you said before you were 48 years old, correct?
Yeah, I was 48 when I started.
So, so entering into law school, 48 years old, how did it feel to be a novice again in another new field? I would think that as being a part of the National Guard and the Marine Corps, you know a lot about the Army. I mean, I don't know what sort of specialized knowledge you had, but you probably became some sort of an expert in those sorts of fields. How did it feel to come into a new field, to be a novice again, to have to learn everything? What was that sort of visceral feeling?
It was disconcerting. Yeah, it was hard. Spending my whole adult life doing one thing, and at the point I retired, I was, I thought I knew what I was doing, and so then start something brand new with all these kids. I was the oldest student in the class. There was one other guy who was a couple of months younger than me, who also happened to be in the Guard, the National Guard, but um, it was hard, and seeing all these younger students who seem to have an advantage in their youth, but I had the advantage in the my stamina and my will to survive.
Yeah, that's amazing, honestly, because I always like to get sort of those visceral feelings, those sort of in the moment type of experiences that people feel, and being at your age and entering into law school, it's just such an interesting perspective to get from someone because there could be someone out there listening who's, a bit older than the typical law student who may be thinking about it. Well, my suggestion to them, and I would think you would suggest as well, just go do it. There's nothing stopping you. There's nothing, there's no constructs around that will break it down and won't let you do it. But let's talk about your first experiences. You were at Rhodes and Jackson. You were a law clerk in 2014 to 15, and then you became an associate professor not professor, associate attorney the following year. Can you talk about those experiences? I like to highlight the positive and negative experiences on this podcast because from what I've learned through all these episodes is that in many cases you don't really find out what you want to do in the law until you do it. So how did you figure out what you wanted to do in the law?
So I knew that I wanted to do employment law, or I had a feeling that I did. And so between my second and third year of law school, I was looking for internships. Um, and in deep in Southern Illinois, in Carbondale, it's a small town. There are virtually no firms that practice employment law. I'd applied for some internships in DC, some things like that. The summer between my first and second year, I did an internship at the Pentagon, and made some connections. Hoped that maybe that there would be some connections that would get me a better foot in the door for a job between an internship between my second and third year. But competition is really stiff for those. So all it really got me was my connections got me someone I could call to find out that I didn't get selected before I got the letter in the mail. But as a fallback, so I'm going to be in Carbondale, what I'm going to do. And uh, one of the professors at the law school, uh, sort of a mentor of mine, suggested that I apply to Roden Jackson for an internship. What he didn't tell me was that he was personal friends with the owners of the firm and that he was going to make a call and tell them that they needed to hire me. Um, so I interviewed there. They were the only firm in town that does employment law at all. So I got the internship and learned a lot about that. What I learned between my internship and in my couple of years as an associate is I wasn't really fond of litigation. Um, I was on trial team in law school, and I enjoyed it. But when I got to the firm and realized that all the time it takes to prepare for trial and to be really prepared to do it well, there's a lot of prep work. And as you mentioned in our conversation before, that a small percentage of those actually ever make it to trial. You can prepare and prepare, and on the eve of the case actually going to trial, settle. But you've got to prepare as you're going to trial. So I just realized one of the things I learned about myself was that the actual litigation wasn't for me. I really loved the topic. I enjoyed it, but I researching about it, writing some of the things, but I just didn't enjoy the actual litigation. So that's something that now in my current practice, I don't do litigation.
Yeah, that was also, like you said before in our conversation before we started recording, but that was a profound finding of mine that barely any cases actually go to trial. When I was told that, I was like, what do you mean? That can't be true. And it totally shook the whole framework of everything I was looking to do because I thought to myself, I remember one time I was in a mock trial competition and the judge was telling us he was a trial lawyer and he said 1 hour in the courtroom is 2 hours preparing. So if it's a 4 hour trial, you're gonna be preparing for 8 hours. And like you said, on the eve of the trial, it could be settled and all your work and just like that, gone.
Um,
So that was something I found out, and clearly for yourself, that really made me think about what I wanted to do going forward with the law, going forward. If I even wanted to go to law school at that, I was so young that I was able to have that thought. But you said something before that your mentor had helped you get your position. Can you speak about how important networking and mentorship has been for you in your career so far?
yeah, it's huge. The especially in the legal field, lawyers, as you're learning, especially as you're interviewing these attorneys, we like to help people. We want to help other young law students, young attorneys. We want to help them. And so, and the networking it's crucial for referrals for our business. As a private attorney, networking and relationships and referrals are just vital. I had Stacy Brown Randall on. She came to my class yesterday and spoke, which was awesome, um, and that on specifically that topic. And I had her come because it is so crucial. Networking. That's how we met. Is on LinkedIn. Is how we connected. And actually, from Stacy Brown Randall's post, we connected, and here I am. And so it's vital for these kinds of things and getting jobs, getting business. It's so crucial.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for all that you. I actually invited her, so she'll be on soon. But
Yay.
but thank you for Stacy as well going to Martin's classroom. It was probably a great presentation on networking and how important it is. Because personally, I think networking is absolutely everything. Not mentorship is a little bit of a weird word for me because I think in the traditional sense we think like older lawyer, you got to go talk to him, have lunch with them all the time. But I think in the new digital age, mentorship has become a little fuzzy in the traditional sense, just because there's many people that I've never met in my life, and many people that I look up to that I'll probably never speak to in my entire life. But I've gained so much from them that they're basically my mentors, just based on the
Yeah.
content they put out there. I always think of Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you know Tim Ferriss, but
Yeah.
I mean, that guy. Absolutely. I mean, for the most part, in starting this podcast, his own podcast inspired me to start this podcast, to have even a thought that that was possible. So shout out Tim. But I know he's not listening, but I still got to shout him out. Um, but I have to ask, there's a sign behind you that says the top 10 legal mistakes entrepreneurs make in their small businesses. Can you talk about that? Because I'm so interested. I've been staring at it the whole time.
Well, good. It worked. So when I worked at the law school, and the area that we live and work in here in Southern Illinois is, it's a pretty small community. Carbondale is a small community with the school, and we have county seats on either side, Williamson County and Jackson County. And so when I worked at the law school, um, I did VA disability claims and discharge upgrades for veterans and some other civil legal matters. And I did that for about 5 years. And I went to a variety of events representing the law school as the veterans guy. And so I became known as the veterans guy. If judges, private attorneys, anybody had a veteran that came in and they didn't know what to do with him or her, they called me or they emailed me to ask questions. So I was known as the veterans guy. So when I decided to leave the law school and do my own practice, I wasn't going to continue to do that work, the VA disability claims. And not that I wouldn't, we weren't going to advertise that. It wasn't going to be the focus of our practice. I was going to do small business work. And so in reading and listening to podcasts and researching, how do I rebrand myself strongly to let people know that I know something else besides veteran stuff, I stumbled on a guy by the name of Mike Capuzzi, who writes about creating short books, or shooks as he called them, short helpful books, shooks. They're small books that talk about a pretty narrow topic in 120, 130 pages. They're not these huge tomes. And I know we're not video, but I can just show it to you. It's just a short book. It's not big. It's not like a textbook. But it's my calling card almost. I have these small books. So if I go to meetings, I always have 2 or 3 of them, or I go to a networking event talking about what I do. And they're like, "Oh, that's a really interesting topic." I said, "Well, what would you like one of my books?" And so they're $4 or $5. It's just fantastic marketing. So from that, there have been a few podcast invitations that I've gotten from that, business that I've gotten from the book. So that's what the book is, or that's what the sign is the cover of the book.
Well, first, I'd just like to say congratulations on the book. I may be a little late on that, but I always like to congratulate people on things that they do in their life. I think it's a wonderful
Thanks.
thing. I myself would love to write a book one day. I don't know what it would be about. I like novels, I really do. Actually, I don't. That's a lie. I like one novel in specific, The Brothers Karamazov, which is one of my favorite books ever. It's
Interesting.
it's quite dense. It's
Yeah.
1,100 pages, but every single page is absolutely amazing. That guy is like, oh my goodness. I love Fyodor Dostoevsky more than anything in this world. But I want to talk about something interesting that I saw. Actually, no, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about first, because you were speaking my language. I heard you talk about marketing. I heard you talk about rebranding, and you became the veterinarian's guy, as you said or the veterans guy, not veterinarian, the veterans guy at the court. And you clearly built up that personal brand. So can you talk about how important personal branding is and how you can build it up, how you can market yourself in a positive light?
Yeah. So when we rebranded, or I rebranded, and I should say my wife and I, because my wife worked at the law school. We both left the law school about the same time. She was the admissions director at the law school. And we just decided through some long COVID walks that we just wanted to do something different. So she's not a lawyer though, so she's my assistant, and we just spent a lot of time thinking about, that rebranding. What's it going to be? So I'm not, and maybe because I came to the law later, my practice is not named Martin Parsons as an associate and associates or Parsons Law. It's legal advocacy headquarters. Sort of it's got a sort of a military vibe. If you look at our fonts and the logo that has the HQ, the shield and the HQ, it's got kind of and I mean, it has a military vibe. The sign in front of my office hangs out from the building and has the firm name, and then at the bottom, hanging on its own sign, it has my name, which if you went to a military post, that's kind of what you would see. If you went to the headquarters company, it would say headquarters company, and then it would be either like the commander's name and the first sergeant's name. So it sort of has that military vibe. And then we've continued that with the uniform colors, um, a logo or a slogan. Proactively protecting your business is sort of our catchphrase. We want to talk to small business owners and nonprofits before they get in trouble. I've stopped saying before they need us, because they need us when they first start. So I've done some things around that. The name is trademarked, our brand, that slogan is trademarked, the colors are uniform. I have uh, uh, business cards for the book. I have bookmarks that are branded as well. We have thank you cards, more generic cards with the brand, pens. That everything is consistent and tied together with color and branding, to make it all uniform and stand out. And it's important. Anytime I'm going to present or do something, getting my name and the firm tied in there together. And then the other part was like, how do you do that in a positive way? So we've got the basic cores of it, and then we spend quite a bit of time being involved. I represent quite a few different nonprofits as paying clients, and then we also do some of those as non-paying clients in order to give back and continue to help, so that in ways that gets the name out there too.
What I think is so fascinating and interesting is just how intentional you are with your marketing, that you keep it within your background, that you make it sort of that military style to infuse everything that you've done in your life to sort of tell a story in itself when people come by. So if someone was in the army and they look at your writing or the sign and it evokes some sort of nostalgia within them, like that. Oh, I remember back in my army days, I'd see a sheet in front of me and it looked just like this. Or when I first arrived at the army office, when I first applied, this looked exactly like this. So I just love the intentionality of it all. And I reflect on my own personal marketing and branding. Everything I do is usually black and white. I pick black because I look good in black. Like that was the rationale. I was like, I like black. I look good in black. If I ever made a hat or something, I like wearing hats. If I ever did that, like I'd look good in it. But maybe I have to get more intentional. I have to somehow weave it in with what I'm doing here. So you got me thinking, Martin. That's a good thing. Whenever you got
Yeah,
me thinking, that's always a good
yeah,
thing. But I have
yeah.
to ask what I was going to previously ask before I asked about the personal branding is you are also a lawyer at the National Marine Corps Business Network. I'm very interested. What is that and what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's a LinkedIn group of Marine Corps veterans, and by adding that in our list of employment, it makes finding fellow Marine Corps veterans easier. So it's a loose affiliation, but by adding it to my jobs, we're just more connected that way with other Marine Corps veterans. So and as part of getting that LinkedIn profile a little higher to folks who have that military connection, specifically in the Marine Corps, we just connect and work together that way. So I don't really work for them, but that's the reason it's listed there.
Well, I think that's a wonderful thing. I'll let my grandpa know. He's a little older, and I don't think he even knows what LinkedIn is, but he's a Marine Corps veteran himself. But
Oh, nice.
I think he'd enjoy that talking to fellow Marine Corps veterans, and hopefully he gets in. I don't think he will. He's not even sure how to use a phone really, but he tries his best. That's all I care about. Um, but I want to talk about what you do now. You're, like you said, a lawyer and owner of the Legal Advocacy headquarters. So what do you guys do there? I know you talked about a little bit small business. Take a little more deep dive into what exactly you do there and how you support the community.
Yeah. So as we said, I help small businesses and nonprofits get set up, stay legal, have the agreements that they need, um, do the things they're supposed to do, advise them, employment related matters, just be in a sounding board in many ways for all of those things. And we try to do it a little differently uh, in the sense that most of the things that we do, if I'm setting up a nonprofit or a small business, we can do that it's just flat rate. If I'm setting up an LLC or nonprofit, this is how much it's going to be. If they need a certain agreement, I can tell them what it's going to cost. So most of the things that we do flat rate. They know up front. They pay up front. Um, if it requires more work than I anticipated, then that's kind of on me. But it's important for them to have the certainty in cost. And we also offer some pretty unique among the legal field subscription or membership options that especially for the small nonprofits, I have found that they really like that because they can budget it. So I mean, we've got this entry level subscription membership for $95 a month. They can call me or email me with as many questions as they have, because, as I said, we proactively protecting their business or nonprofit. If they can call me and ask a question that's going to save them time and money later, it's a win-win, really. So and then we have a couple different levels of the subscription depending on the needs of the small business owner or nonprofit, and that's growing for me here. Like I said, it's a hard mental shift, I think, especially maybe here where we're at in Southern Illinois, to get people to think about that. And I know when I talk to some of my lawyer colleagues here, I'll tell them about my subscription, and you have unlimited calls for $95. They're like, that seems pretty crazy, Martin. I mean, the unlimited, really? I mean, for $95, that's not, that's hardly a half an hour's worth of pay. But most months, they might reach out once, twice. I've had some of them I haven't heard from for 2 months, and I'll have to email them myself or call and say, hey, how's it going? Do you need anything? And then they get in a flurry, they've got something going on, and they make more calls. But when they do need something, I'm the one that's always on their mind because they're getting the bill every month. So it's almost like they're paying me to be on their mind when they need something, and to have the peace of mind that they've got someone that they can call. Builds a better relationship with the business or the nonprofit, because we're communicating more regularly. I get to know the business. It's not transactional. It's a relational thing in that sense too. So those are the couple of things, and then we do kind of tied in with more of the small. Could be both, I guess. I do trademarks also, along with that, which is fun, a little more creative, or can be. So
I think that may have been the greatest reframe of the subscription model I've ever heard in my entire life. I'm incensed right now. Oh my goodness. That was amazing. I've never heard anyone talk about the subscription model like that. And I know it's probably not great for many attorneys out there because of the billable hours, which is a contentious topic I've seen on LinkedIn. I don't know much
it
about it,
is.
but a lot of people talk about it, a lot of people arguing about it. I'm like, oh my goodness. But I think the fact that you keep you in their mind at every second of the day. And as being a subscription model, you provide that safety net for those people for whenever they come into any problems or anything like that, that they could reach out to you and they could get those problems solved because they pay for it every month. Oh, that was amazing. Martin, I'm stealing that. But
Thank you. You can have it. Keep spreading it. We want it's an access to justice thing. It makes it more affordable, accessible. Yeah. Uh, I need to get more clients to understand it too, though, because I have a lot. I'll pitch it. I'll tell their heads are nodding. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. I say, well, let's, can we sign you up? And they're like, well, I don't know. So we're getting there.
it's
I'm
very
glad you got it. So
it's very non-traditional, and because I'm on Substack, I subscribe to a lot of Substacks. I subscribe to a lot of other things. So I know the subscription model very well. I know it's a very, very new thing. It's a very digital age sort of thing. But what I'm seeing now, it's very crazy. But I think over the past couple episodes and as a whole, there's a big movement, there's a big rumble coming in the legal industry, a lot of moving to sort of the digital age, moving away from tradition once again. I would imagine that when people went from paper to computers, there was a big change there. People were like, no, I can't do that, we have to do everything by hand. And then we start to computers, and now you have AI and you have all this other stuff that's coming in, and I feel like I'm on the precipice of this new age of the law, and I love it so much. but But from there, what was I going to say? I have no idea what I was going to say. But I think it's such a wonderful thing to have the subscription model, to have access to that. And it's something I just love it. I love it so much, Martin. I can't
well,
get a
thank you. There's a ton. There's more and more, as you said. It's growing. There's more folks. There's an attorney um, uh, that I just had his name, and it'll come back to me. Who's the subscription attorney? He's got a Substack too. And I was on his podcast a couple weeks ago. Matt Kurbis, the subscription attorney, and subscriptions are his whole thing, preaching that. But and I've just studied a ton over the last year, and I think it's growing slowly in different pockets. So and it just makes sense. It makes Well, I won't get into the whole discussion about the billable hour and things. That could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah, I think
Maybe.
back, and I think to myself, the first person that really got to the subscription model was probably Jeff Bezos using Amazon Prime. Now that I think about it.
Yeah,
But
and now everything we do, I mean, all sorts of stuff with subscriptions. I mean, medical products, hair care, TVs, video, health supplies, uh, groceries. You can just Why not legal services? Why can't we?
I love to hear it. Something I wanted to ask actually, since you work with so many entrepreneurs and nonprofits, small businesses, what are some main qualities that you see in a lot of the entrepreneurs that you work with that you see eventually they become successful, but what are some qualities that they have that made you think this person's going to be successful?
I mean, they're definitely visionaries. They have a big idea, maybe not a big idea, but a different idea too. I guess it doesn't have to be big, but different, solving a problem that someone hasn't solved yet, or solving it differently and providing that solution. They're creative that way. And they're driven. They definitely have to have a drive, which comes, a love for that, or just kind of like we talked about how this podcast drives you, and you get up every day just driven by this podcast. And I think that and in a sense you're entrepreneurial in that too, in this endeavor. It's similar qualities, and those are things that make someone successful. And even overcoming, being the ability to hold on to that idea even in the face of adversity, family telling you that you couldn't, or friends, and that it's not going to work, and working through that. And then being willing to get help too. The ones that I think can take it to the next levels are people who realize that I can't do it all. Many entrepreneurs want to because they're interested, they love learning, and so they want to take on all these roles and marketing and promotion and accounting and bookkeeping and legal and setting up their own companies and doing all these things when at a certain point that all doing all those other things takes you away from doing the thing that you started the business for. You're creating the widget, doing the podcast, whatever that endeavor is. If you're doing all this other stuff, you can't do that as well or scale it. So the ones that I see who do grow are the ones who accept that, okay, I can't do it myself. I need partners in that, trusted partners. And bankers, accountants, and lawyers are sort of the big trifecta in those additional people that you need, or financial advisors. And depending on, some entrepreneurs are just scattered. They've got their idea people, but they're not implementation people. So if they're not recognizing that they're the idea person, not the implementation person, and finding that partner who can help implement is also important, or guide, or something, or some of the important things.
Yeah, Martin, I don't mean, see, I try to hold the philosophy major within me, and I just simply can't right now because one of my favorite lines I've ever heard in my life is from Socrates, who was alive thousands of years ago. But he said, "The only thing I know is that I don't know." And
Mm,
it's very profound, and I think it's true to those great entrepreneurs is that they accept that, okay, maybe I don't know how to really do all of this, and maybe I don't know the technical side of this, or the widget I'm trying to make or the software I'm trying to make. I don't really know the back end software or knowing how to do the coding. And you could outsource that stuff. You could cut that overhead on your own business and be able to really create the thing that you want to see with the help of others. I
exactly.
try not to be a one-man band, but at the same time, I'm always asking people for help, always asking people for advice because I don't know anything. I literally don't know anything. I am just floating in space at the moment. And I have to say, you called me an entrepreneur. I am honored and also flattered. Because I don't see myself as an entrepreneur, but I guess I am. I guess I am. Am I, Martin? Am I an entrepreneur?
I think so. I think so. This is, wait a minute, what you're doing is, I mean, it's a service. It can become a business. You do it long enough, it generates sponsorships and revenue and grow into other things. So, and there are definitely podcast hosts who have either taken their podcast and spun it into other businesses, or vice versa, or complementary things. So you are an entrepreneur.
That's just, I wanted to hear it, I'll be honest. But Martin, down to our last four questions here. The first question I have to ask is live on the Lawyers in the Making podcast. Martin Parsons, what are your book recommendations for the people out there?
Oh wow. I read a lot. Um, so for like small business owners, or even if prospective lawyers who may eventually have their own practice, um, uh, where's my
No, it's
uh,
go ahead, cheat all you want. This isn't.
uh, Profit First? Like, it's not even on my shelf. Profit First. Mike McAllowitz, just as a business book, is really important. Angela Duckworth, read recently. Grit is a really good reminder about the importance of sticking to stuff and what that means and looks like. Um, I was trying, because I read a lot, but then I forget them, and forget what I had read. Um, Winning on Purpose is another really good book that, and I can't remember the author's name, that I recently finished. But it talks about, um, you know, the purpose of your business and your life, and how we start with why. Um, and I can't, I it's I'm his name's escaping me, but those are a couple of the recent ones. I read tons of books on the subscription model, for example, lately, and those aren't as relevant to your audience in general as some of the others.
Oh,
So
whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, I forgot to preface it. It doesn't have to be about the law. It doesn't have to be, it could be about literally anything. It could be about improving your life, improving your mindset, fitness. I can't, chicken farming. I don't know. That's what just came.
um, the um, gosh, there's another one I just recommended to a gentleman I was working with. The Referral of a Lifetime. It's a book that's written as a parable about networking and referrals and how to create that list, which is also really good. Um, yeah, I'll stop
All right,
there.
all right. You look like deep entrenched in
Yeah, like I had
trying to get
another
a
one
trying to
that
get a
comes to
book.
me.
I know I've never only once have I made my Nate Crespo book recommendations. I'll never do it again. Um, but I always recommend Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and Influence People. Oh,
Classic. Yeah,
golden book.
yeah,
Really,
that's classic.
I
Yeah,
I always go back and read a couple sections every so often just to refresh my mind, make sure I'm doing the right things, make sure I'm acting in the way that I want to act. Oh, it's such a wonderful
exactly.
book. It's like my
Yeah,
Bible.
yeah, classic. One I have Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. One of my spare copies is propping up my monitor. I'd forgotten about that, but that's a classic that I have extra copies of that I often share with students or people that I might mentor
Well,
too. It's right. It's not quite up with the Carnegie book, but I think it's in that kind of range for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you gave very sufficient, great book
All
recommendations.
right.
I I always love a good book recommendation. But third to last question here. What are the sorts of things that you consume, not food, consume on a daily basis, either that be through social media, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, LinkedIn? What are some favorite people you follow on a daily basis? What is crossing the transom of Martin's mind on a daily basis?
Well, that's a good question. I just started. I have several different newsletters I get. That's what I was going to go to my email to go through that and just look at some of the stuff that I'm getting. I I'm subscribed to several newsletter email newsletters that I get. Um, so I was trying to find the most recent stuff that I really like that's worthwhile. And of course, I'm not finding them. I just deleted a couple but I think are important.
Also, podcast
Uh,
recommendations as well are in there,
yeah.
and the things you
Oh,
can.
they're coming too, huh? Gosh. So Seth Godin has a fantastic email newsletter every day. They're just really short. That's what I was looking for. Seth Godin. Um, he's an entrepreneur, written a lot of books, and they're just some of them are life things, some of them are business related, but they're really short. Most of them are really impactful. Um, I get an email from the Hustle,
Oh yeah.
the Brew. Those are kind of the big ones. The Tech Brew that spun off from them. Looking through my deleted one, those sort of the big ones. I get one from an attorney, David Ward, which is really good. Attorneymarketing.com is his website. He's got a really good newsletter that's just pretty short and to the sweet. Um, and then, yeah, I have, gosh, my podcast list is mostly has been, especially over the last few years, related to starting to practice for sure. Um, so that's been focused on that. Um, Stacy Brown Randall's was the top of the list, was one of those. Be That Lawyer with Steve Fretzen, another networking podcast. Um, Maximum Lawyer podcast is another granddaddy of the podcast. Law Subscribed is Matt Kurbis's podcast. I mentioned him. He's a subscription guy. Um, Profit with Law is another good legal podcast. The Law Entrepreneur. I've been really focused on the legal stuff. To quite a few of the other things have gone by the wayside. My general interest.
I mean, it's great to hear these recommendations because it gives you a picture of what's going through your mind on a daily basis. You're very focused on your firm. You're very focused on growing your firm, and I love to hear that. I love the growth mindset that you hold. I knew you had it, but to see it exhibited through the things that you consume on a daily basis is always a wonderful thing. And now I have a list of podcasts to check out. So, oh, everyone wins. But I have to ask, since you're subscribed to the Hustle and Morning Brew, my brother actually has Morning Brew sweatpants. I know they did it. They did like a giveaway in like 2018, and he was very early on in it. He knew Alex Lieberman or Austin Lieberman. I think the other guy's Alex. But you have the Hustle as well. I know that's Sam Parr. One of my favorite podcasts is My First Million. Have you ever heard of them?
No,
Oh wow.
I have not. I'm putting it on my list though.
I always don't mean to recommend my podcast here, but I love they're just so good. They have great guests, but they keep it light. It's very entertaining. It's not. I know some podcasts can get a little dry, a little information. It's really just an audiobook, a lot of the podcast, but they
Right.
keep it entertaining. They keep it light, keeps you focused on task. Do you want another podcast recommendation? I
I
have one.
do. I'm take it.
Okay, so one of my favorite ones. I've really been listening to this one, but it's called Founders.
Hmm.
So it's by David Senera. He goes through biographies of entrepreneurs throughout history. Now he's getting into like historical figures too, which is very nice. I know he
Hmm.
just had an episode about Napoleon, and I like Napoleon, so I listened to that one. But he has the Rockefellers, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. He has one about PayPal itself, but he goes through the books and then gives highlights that he found throughout the books. And it is just absolutely amazing. Oh my goodness, I've learned so much off of that, more than I could ever imagine. It's just amazing. I feel like I'm getting an MBA course, but I'm not.
Nice.
Let's not go too far, Nate. But
I
second,
will say I do. I also have a pair of Morning Brew sweatpants. Because I referred so many people. I've got a mug. I've got the sweatpants. Because I shared it on LinkedIn and got people to subscribe. So I'm working towards the backpack is the next milestone. So
well, hey, I'll be sure to hit your referral link there, and I'll throw my email in there to get you closer to that backpack. But second to last question here, Martin. You're always working, you got your law firm, you're helping small businesses, helping nonprofits, but what does an ideal Friday night and Sunday morning look for Martin?
oh, that's a tough one. So I have a teenage stepson. Who's in he's sophomore. So a lot of Friday nights, he plays in the either the marching band or the pep band. So during the school year, Friday nights consist of going to a football game or a basketball game, a high school football game or basketball game to watch him and the game. So that's sort of a big Friday night right now. And then Sunday mornings, like to just relax, maybe do a breakfast, uh, like some Sunday morning edition TV. Maybe depending on how late in the morning we're talking about, maybe there's a Chiefs game on early enough to catch. I don't know. So
Back to back episodes of Kansas City Chiefs fans. I love to hear that. I can talk about it again. I won't go as in depth as I did in the last episode, but I gush over Patrick Mahomes. I think he's the greatest quarterback to ever live on the planet Earth. He's better than Tom Brady. Come at me, bring me all the fire. I'm ready to defend him by my will. I swear on my life. I think he's amazing.
I agree. We would agree. He is. He's really fun to watch. Even this year they were struggling early in the season. I thought maybe this isn't their thing, but just like a lot of their games where they're second half players. So they're a second half team. Same thing, a second part of the season team, and they showed what they were made of, and we'll see next year. We're gonna get if we'll get the three-peat.
I think we're getting the three-peat, Martin. I think we're getting the three. And I'm a Giants fan, but they suck. So me and my dad have now informally become Kansas City Chiefs fan. We tune in every week. We talk on the phone about it afterwards. We're like, "Did you see Patrick? He was amazing." Oh, he's oh my even that I know the week one. I think they lost to the Lions on week one, and I was talking to my roommate, and he was like, "I'm a little worried." I'm like, "I'll never lose faith in the GOAT. I'll never, ever lose faith in Patrick Mahomes because he'll surprise you and he'll win those games. God damn it."
Yeah.
But Martin, last question. I do this at the end of every episode. What are your words of wisdom for the aspiring law students, the current law students, and the legal professionals out there in the world?
So for I don't know if it's all I don't know if it's all the same advice, but uh, definitely if you're thinking about it, um, just do it. But let me back up because I think that it's important to make sure that you do think about it. Some of the exploration, maybe they won't go into quite as deep an exploration as you've done, Nate, in trying to figure it out. But you want to make sure it's for you. But there are a lot of ways to practice law. I guess maybe that'd be the better advice. You had this vision in your head of the trial attorney, which is what most of us get from TV. But there are so many ways to practice law, depending on, and they can fit who you are. I am not a litigator. I have a mediator's personality. I do a little mediation, but I don't even really like that. I like to advise and counsel. I really liked the VA law because it was administrative and wasn't adversarial. Trademark stuff is administrative and not hardly isn't adversarial either. And there's just so many ways to practice the law that could fit with whoever you are as a person. So that's one of the neat things I think about the practice of law. There's just so many ways to do it. And more non-traditional ways to do it too, that technology has made possible. So, explore, if you really have an interest in the law, explore ways that fit who you are. And then, through law school, that'd be a way to do that. And for lawyers who maybe aren't where they want to be, it's okay to leave or change ships or look at other ways to do it and to do things differently too. There's a lot of opportunity to do that.
Well, Martin, beautifully said. There's no time like the present, and there's not one straight path to law. There are only your unique path to the law, who you
Love it.
are, and what you embody. Oh, it's the mantra of this podcast, and it's what I write on, what I will preach till the cows come home, that there is not one straight path. There is your own unique path based on who you are and what you want to do. But Martin, that's the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on here, spreading your wisdom, spreading your experiences. And for everyone out there listening, check us out, lawyersinthemaking.substack.com. And I will see you in the next one.